All right. So yeah, my name is Jimi Scheid. I work for CAL FIRE's Urban and Community Forestry program, and I'm the urban forester for the Bay Area and the North Coast. It's a pleasure to be here. How many people are a member of ABAG in the audience? Show of hands. All right, handful. How many people are members of the California Urban Forest Council? All right. Do you see those hands that weren't up, Nancy? Before you leave, be sure to talk to Nancy. It's really a small contribution for a lot of great benefits, such as the video she just showed. Kind of ironic, though, that given the situation in the midst of probably the most precipitation I've seen in quite some time, we're giving a lot of talks on drought. So, but with that, it's a good thing, and we'll move forward. I'm going to give you a brief overview of things that are going on in the state, trends, and other facts. As you can see, current conditions, we're entering our fourth straight year of drought, all-time low rainfall levels, reservoir levels, river levels. We're just seeing basically no snowpack in the Sierras. It's amazing, and I'm sure you've all seen figures of that. But as you can see here from the graphics, which you can find on the Drought Monitor website, staffed by the USDA, 71% of the state is in what's considered extreme drought. So as you can see, California obviously sticks out, and we have, a big task ahead of us, depending on who you work for or what your goals are. Again, just more facts. 12 million dead trees reported in the Sierra Nevada and Southern California. As it relates to that, many mountain pine bark beetles affecting ponderosa and gray pine predominantly in the Sierras. A lot more fire activity as it relates to that. Obviously, these trees are being predisposed and are just kind of waiting for the right situation to take place. Some other rules that are going to be seen as forest practice rules change with the removal of dead and dying disease and trying to kind of fast track that. And additionally, just recently, the USDA Forest Service awarded more funding for California in terms of helping out higher elevational watersheds, ranchers that are experiencing difficulties due to lack of water, and fuels removal. So as I mentioned, I'd be remiss to not mention the fire aspect of my job. And as you can see from the breakdown there, just in the course of 1 year's time, the steady increase of about 800 additional fires that we've had to respond to in both state responsibility area and contracts we have locally. And that compares to the average, over 1,000 more fires. So with that, there's a risk. And if you look at it from that side of things, what are we concerned with? We're concerned with, controlling the vegetation that grows not only in our wildlands, but more importantly near our homes. So that's where a lot of us come in with our management objectives. Again, our reservoirs are really low, and this is, as of June 10th, only at 37% on average, except for in Santa Cruz, they have a reservoir which isn't actually measured within those 12. And so there are a few exceptions to the rule along the coast, but overall, we're seeing our firefighters more and more resourceful with where they're drawing water sources from. And that could be a swimming pool in your backyard if your home's on fire. So, additionally, with keeping with the mandates, not washing our fire trucks, leaving, our landscapes dormant, and not using hydrants with active water streams for training purposes. So we're trying to do stuff on both ends of things. Hope all of you had a good 4th of July, but even the risk that exists with fireworks is seen in a greater light now with cities, from Cupertino, Cambria, Fairfield, all around, basically excluding fireworks celebrations from their yearly plans, and basically in Fairfield disallowing people from visiting some of their open space parks for fear of fire hazard. And the creation of Safe and Sane fireworks, which is new this year, and only being adopted on a city by city basis for people that actually want to utilize fireworks. And so, the stats are definitely there. And of course, there's a residential burn ban in place for these lands that we manage. So many of you are probably aware in your cities that we're being ordered to reduce our water consumption 25% statewide. That varies on a city by city basis, but the governor's executive order from April, lists these as kind of highlights amongst the many objectives. But not only anything from just education and rebate programs for lawn retrofits to the California Energy Commission trying to basically just increase their presence with a rebate program for from folks that have maybe old or clunky appliances in their homes. So there's a lot of things that you can read into that if you choose to. But mostly on a landscape basis. I thought this was interesting to mention, not to take away from what we're all here to talk about in terms of outdoor landscape water use, but a recent study by Don Hodel and Dennis Pittenger, published here just a couple months ago, shows that within the grand scheme of things, agriculture being the largest user of water in the state, where we fit into this for outdoor landscaping use is really only a small percent, really only 9%, and that's the title of the study. So it's just something to keep into perspective as you make your efforts and strive to be where you're at. There are greater management objectives hopefully in place. And I thought this was just an interesting quote out of that, amongst others. But this idea that, we realize that growth needs to be mitigated, but that's not really something we're seeing as a way to control. So, it only stands to reason how things will move going forward. With all these changes, we're seeing issues related to health in terms of increased particle pollution, higher pollen and dust rates, and a fact that 73% of residents live in areas, counties with failing air quality grades. So it's pretty amazing, and it's really just being exacerbated by this drought here. Some local observations from folks I've talked with, articles I've read, newspaper reports, everything from people being hesitant to water anything, much in the same way people tend to overreact in fire seasons where they figure that the best vegetation clearance is to remove all vegetation from their property. So, it's really incumbent upon us to kind of enforce these management objectives in a way that provides balance. So redwoods growing outside their natural range are seeing a lot of stress this year. Pines, of which comprise a fourth of the urban forest in Newport Beach, are failing. A lot of cities not wanting to plant or being hesitant to do so this year. Different design strategies coming out of this in various cities with water collection and retention. And some other city numbers just to throw at you, all the way from where I call home, even in Eureka, there's a reduction policy in place, and certain days that you can water. This is kind of the theme generally throughout our various communities with outdoor landscaping. To meet this 25% reduction, there's different goals that the local water agencies are able to work with those communities to develop. But as you can see, there's really a lot going on and a lot to read into this, depending on what city you're in. And this is a graphic the LA Times provides a link to, a drought report card, if you will, and just taking in the local perspective with EB Mud, where they stand in a gallons per person used daily. At 65, it's less than the state average, which is good, and it shows, as you might expect, that closer to the coast, oftentimes the less water that is used. So with the high being down near Palm Desert at 348. So different challenges in different places. San Diego, this is a graphic pulled from their website and their water conservation program. Anything from not overfilling your pool to rectifying leaks and using recirculating pumps for fountains and things of that nature. And a lot of these strategies that we're seeing in the hotel and food industries. And this is just a recent one that came out. Again, another reason to stay informed by being a member of CUF, because they provide a lot of links to these stories that affect us all. In LA, they're now seeing, a large sector of their urban forest declining. In North Hollywood Park, 56 trees being removed, and basically 14,000 trees dying in the last year, attributed to drought primarily. But and with that, the benefits that we're seeing lost in terms of wildlife, their ability to pollinate, heat island effect, and potential tree failure, the risk of failure being there. Because if we don't act, if we just pretend the drought doesn't exist and take no action, we're going to be faced with even more of a problem than just simply removing the trees that need to come out. When they do come down, they won't come down at the right time, and we'll be faced with that. In Carlsbad, they're finishing up their desalination plant pipeline at the cost of a paltry $1 billion. So that's going to open up here later this year, it's expected, and converting 50 million gallons of ocean water a day into potable water. And that basically equates to 7 to 10% of their customer base being served. So there's different strategies being employed different places. And then you have places that are just simply out of water. Whether it's East Porterville, up further in Central California near Tracy and Mountain House, and all the way up in Eastern Humboldt on the Hoopa Valley tribal lands, water is now at a premium because it's going away. And it doesn't matter what part of the state you're living in many cases, this is something we're all having to think about. So of course, with all this, there's a lot of fear that exists, as it could with any such malady. And it's important to remember that there are cyclical events that take place, and hopefully we can come out of this. But obviously, this human-caused problem, our existence here is showing a steady increase in water conservation tactics being employed. So. We have a lot of people that we serve in our various roles that are going to be, quick to remove everything, or to not care for their trees because, that's just another part of vegetation and conserving water. But that's not the message we're trying to get across, because they do have that value. Trees do, hopefully after this, and as rains hopefully return, that's not going to be something that's easily replaced if you don't care for it now when it needs it most. So yeah, how do we tell this story? We have to understand the benefits of trees, of which we're all pretty aware of, climate change factors, and adjusting local policies and tree planting palettes accordingly, and the patterns with climate change, and hopefully maybe a cycle that we can see an end of here, at least in the interim before it returns. So there's a lot of costs with this, with employing these strategies. Anything from utility rates going to basically the ag sector being affected pretty primarily by this, penalties and fines, you name it. And then just the idea that we've been touching on, that if people aren't taking care of their trees, there's a lost value there. So how sustainable are these efforts? The bigger picture, when we have people like this gentleman that owns property on the edge of the desert, and we continue to develop and push out, are we really getting the message, or are we just simply rolling with the time right now here in the summer in the midst of it? When winter hits and hopefully rains return, is this message going to be lost? Or are we going to continue to strive for this? And what are our long-term objectives in our own city or regions? And why is this necessarily the impetus for change? Why aren't some of these strategies in place beforehand? Perhaps is a question to ask yourself. And the 9% issue we talked about. So yeah, best management practices are great, but they have to be used in concert with human growth and the reliance on natural resources. So these are just some resources I'll leave you with. Hopefully you're aware of Cuff's many and wonderful infographics that tell our story. I decided to include Tree People's infographic, which is back there on the table. Although I don't serve LA or promote much of their stuff in my region, I think it is a pretty handy tool, as we had a help in developing that. LA's got a program called Save the Drop, which may be of interest, with water saving tips there. The Department of Water Resources got their Save Our Water program, which is it's a handy site, and hopefully will be retooled here soon with help from California Relief and others to not just say saving our water, but to encourage saving our trees as well. So in concert. And we're in the process of getting our own fact sheets on mature and young tree care watering in place. They're being vetted currently, and hopefully will be out any day with the final versions. So I don't know whether you can see that, but this is my last slide, and I'll just say thanks. But this is another article that I came across just recently posted that quotes Nancy as well as my supervisor, John Melvin, and the idea that we can't just lose sight of tree care now because of the drought long term. And it's just interesting to note that as we serve different folks in our communities, there's many varying opinions on there on what's right and what's wrong and what actually works. And as you can see just from this sample set here, pretty interesting that people can go as far as saying, the desert's the problem and we should, kind of get rid of deserts, I guess. And the fact that there's misguided policies and just there's going to be a lot of resentment, a lot of disdain during this period of time. But it's hopefully our jobs to work with these people and see the greater picture. So with that, I'll just say thanks, and I guess we'll take questions at another time probably. Thank you.